What's up, YouTube? This is Kevin. Today, making videos, trying to make a YouTube video better. And look at my cast. And hold this website is skillsale.com.
But they're all fringed. Everyone knows that. But not everyone knows that. And not everyone shopping will actually have that information. Sometimes it's even context from the last few videos of you just glaze over something because you mentioned it in the last video. But not every viewer or every shopper has seen that last video. So you have to actually be careful to include those things you might not think you have to include. So when I'm taking notes on these phones, I'm literally using the phone and opening up. I use Google Keep so I can just keep these documents sort of organized. But I don't take the neatest notes. I'm really just jotting things down as soon as I recognize what's happening. So in these, I have a lot of the official specs up here. But then as I start to use them, I'll notice more things that are useful. Sometimes I drop frames in a game. Sometimes I take a picture and I want to remember that this is a picture I should use to talk about in the review. So I'll write this stuff down. A lot of these are useful numbers because it's really hard to keep a lot of numbers in check when there's dates and CPU specs and RAM and prices all to keep in mind. But that's basically what I'm doing as I'm taking notes over the course of using the phone. So just for the technical details, this is something I've been doing for a while. I use Google Keep for my note-taking. It's kind of designed for that, but it's multi-platform and it's cloud-based. So anywhere I'm at, if I want to take a note, I can pull my phone out of my pocket. I can pull my laptop out. I can hop in a browser and just write something down. Then the scripts all happen in Google Drive because it's just a cloud-based drive. You can share it with people. They can look at it. They can edit it. They can fact check and put more things in if you want. But if it's just you can kind of just put it anywhere you want. You can use a Microsoft Word doc. But I think it's important for the note-taking for me anyway, is anytime I just think of something or find something, I just want to quickly be able to write it down. So Google Keep for that, Google Drive for the script. This might be for you akin to the research process. If it's a topic you don't know as much about, you're taking those notes, you're collaborating, bringing it all in one place. It's not neat yet, it's just sort of an information dump. Once you've gathered all of your information, all your research, all your notes, like I have in Google Keep, then it's time for turning it into a video. And for me, that's scripting. That's for me literally writing down from beginning to thanks for watching everything I want to say in between that gets you to that conclusion and that draws you through and keeps you engaged the whole way. And so a lot of this is it's structural. It's knowing that I want to talk about the camera and I want to talk about the price and I want to talk about the battery life, but how do I properly segue between these things? How do I order them in importance? Maybe there's a lot of really important front-loaded stuff to get off your chest at the beginning, and then the less important stuff comes before conclusion at the end. There's no real hard, fast rule for this. In tech, you'll kind of see it all over the place, but I think the general rule is you want to make sure you're respecting your audience's time and attention. If you're not answering the question for the first 5 minutes of the video, they might leave. They might get bored or kind of get frustrated and click to another video that might answer it faster. Some of this also comes from your title and thumbnail, which we'll talk about later in this, but you're eventually going to have to deal with the fact that you've named a video something and you have to address that name. So make sure you tackle that earlier in the video for a better sense of audience satisfaction. A lot of things to consider. I could go on for a long time about this, but I think the bottom line is, well, it's that thing I said at the beginning. Make what you'd want to watch. Think about if you were watching this video, what would you want to see? How would you want it structured? And build it based on that. Now, my business school did not go entirely unused. I do have some useful advice. I had a professor in, I think, my junior year in a finance class give me a really good piece of, and he told the whole class this, a really good piece of advice, which is anytime you're presenting some number, some information, never give that number without context. And for him, context was either how it compares to competition or how it trends over time.
Is it because it was 5 billion last year? Oh, now I have this reason for telling you. Or is it because the competition is at 50 billion? It becomes much more useful when you give it that context. And I've applied this pretty much consistently the entire time I've made videos. If you give some sort of information or number, it's very useful to give context for that number. So if it's the speed of something, you might take for granted that they know it's fast, but if you can tell them it's faster than last year, that's better. If you give the performance number for a benchmark, this is very common in the tech world. The benchmark by itself, you almost never see that without some sort of comparison to other benchmarks of competition. So that applies pretty much for any time you give any sort of number or fact in a video that you want to be useful, contextualize it. I also find it useful for talking to, especially in the first half of people, the people just being entertained by tech a little bit, to just sort of keep the tone in mind as if you're just talking to a friend. It's harder for some than others because, let's be honest, talking to a camera isn't the same thing as talking to a person. But if you can sort of, this is something you learn over time, is how to speak to a camera. Watch my old videos, for example, of how not to, and then watch the latest videos, for example, of delivering a little more naturally. But I think keeping your tone in mind for emphasizing certain things that are important, and speaking negatively about things and speaking positively about things, you end up learning over time with repetition how to do that more effectively. So this is literally the script for the Galaxy S21 Ultra review. This was me taking all of those notes that I took over the week of using the phone, putting them all in here structured. It's in a Google Doc, so literally we'll have other people at the studio take a look at the doc, fact check it, make sure everything's good. And another thing you'll notice when I just scroll through this briefly is some of this is in bold, some of this is not in bold. And that's just something I just decided is I put the things that I deliver to camera in bold, and then everything that's going to have B-roll of what I'm talking about over it is not in bold. And that's a consideration just because it's useful in communicating certain things to actually show the thing. So if I just want to say, this has been my favorite phone of the year, let's just say I hypothetically said that. I didn't, but what if I did? I would probably say that to the camera. This is my favorite phone of the year. It's not useful as communication to not say that to your face. But if I'm trying to tell you, this phone has a little bit of shutter lag when I click the camera button, well, that's going to be a space where I want to show you that happening. I want to show you my finger pressing the shutter button and there being a little bit of a lag there. And that'll be something that's not in bold. So as I go through this whole script, pretty healthy mix of talking to camera and not talking to camera. Different channels have different ratios or balances of how much they talk to camera versus how much they show B-roll. Some people can just talk to camera and deliver things effectively, and I'm very jealous of that, and that's awesome. But for me, knowing my style, this is how I broke it down. I think this breakdown is helpful for me in the scripting phase, mostly as a time saver, because if I didn't break it down, I would deliver everything to camera and then decide in the edit what I think needs to be shown and then go out and get those shots. So because in this scripting phase, I'm already deciding what's going to camera and what's being shot with B-roll, we kind of already now have a shot list and we know how to shoot the video and edit it just a little bit more efficiently. Now, something a lot of people think a lot about in the YouTube world is the length of the video, for many reasons. Over time, my videos have gotten longer, and I think that's just because I have more to say, but also I've gotten better at holding attention for a longer amount of time. But this is important for a number of retention reasons, YouTube analytics reasons, and just entertainment reasons. Shorter videos are easier to make entertaining. That's just facts. People lose their attention over time. So when I'm scripting, I am thinking a little bit about, is this too long? But generally, I just make them long anyway. So okay, your next step is I want you to plan and script your video. It's a loose definition of script. You could have a bullet point list, you could have the full everything you want to say, but the idea you want to keep in mind is try to have that common thread I talked about. Try to find that common thread that makes the story, that makes the flow, that makes the segue, that makes the whole thing one long common thread video. And I think that'll be super useful. So next up, we're going to talk about planning your video and developing the visuals. All right, so developing your visuals. This is maybe my favorite part, but don't tell anyone. So The theme for me for this has always been realism. There's a number of ways you can think about developing your visuals. We're already kind of ahead on it because we've decided what's going to be to camera and what's not. But basically, as you go through and decide what you want to shoot and how, you want to keep your theme in mind. And for me, that's making as realistic of a video as possible. So I'm reviewing a thing. I want you to know what it's like to own and feel and hold that thing. So a lot of my shots are going to specifically be designed to help you feel like you can see what I'm talking about, you can feel what I'm talking about, you can hear what I'm talking about. And that's all kept in mind during this process. I think realism specifically is important for the type of videos I'm trying to make because, again, when I'm going back to what video would I want to watch, I would want to know what that product is going to look like once it's in my hands and once it's in my environment. There's lots of channels that do a really great job with lots of fun footage, really dramatic lighting and colorful shots, all this stuff. And that's fun, but if I watch that, I don't actually yet know really what that looks like once it's in my environment. So I again, focus on the realism of lighting and outdoor environments and things like that to help the viewer better understand what they're looking at and how it actually looks. I think that's pretty important to literally adding value to the video. If you're keeping in mind how is your video valuable to the viewer, for those two groups I was talking about before, it's very valuable to get that out of watching the video. I feel like I've always kind of been on this realism thing as far as video goes. I remember if you go all the way back to the very, very beginning of my videos, I was doing what's called screencasts, just recordings of the screen, delivering tutorials and information, how to do stuff with software. And I would just obsess over like the highest resolution and frame rates so you could see the cursor moving as smooth as possible and see exactly where I clicked. Like that type of stuff, not a lot of 14-year-olds care that much.
travel cards, or some company will give back funds for free if you don't have travel cards. There's a lot of travel card right here. Adventure 1. I got the Adventure 1 on my wallet. Not the Adventure or the Adventure X. Adventure and the Adventure X got it free. The Adventure got anything $95.